You know that moment at Thanksgiving when your uncle asks if you're renting and the entire table goes quiet like you just admitted to a felony? That pause, that look, that collective intake of breath from people who bought their houses in 1987 for $74,000 and now act like they cracked the code of the universe. Here's what nobody at that table will tell you. The idea that buying a home is always smarter than renting, that homeownership is the foundation of the American dream, is one of the most expensive myths this country has ever produced. It has cost the average family more money than almost any other financial decision they will ever make. Today, we're going to look at the math they don't put in the mortgage brochure, the costs that don't show up in the Zillow listing, and the reason the entire American financial system is structurally designed to make you feel like a failure if you don't buy, regardless of whether it actually makes sense for your life. Let's start with where this idea even came from, because the belief that homeownership equals financial success isn't ancient wisdom. It's not even particularly old. It was manufactured. After World War II, the federal government needed to absorb millions of returning veterans into civilian life and prevent the kind of economic collapse that followed World War I. The solution was the GI Bill and the creation of the modern mortgage system. Suddenly, a 30-year fixed-rate loan was available to millions of Americans who had never had access to that kind of financing. The suburbs were built almost overnight. Levittown, New York, an entire town of cookie-cutter houses on identical lots, sold to veterans for about $8,000 with no money down. And the cultural programming began. The house became the symbol, not just of financial security, but of adulthood, responsibility, patriotism, success. Renting became associated with transience, immaturity, a failure to launch. The National Association of Realtors, one of the most powerful lobbying organizations in Washington, has spent decades and hundreds of millions of dollars reinforcing this narrative. They coined the phrase "rent is throwing money away." That phrase has probably cost American families more money than any other 6 words in the history of personal finance, because it's not true, and the math proves it. Let's look at what buying a house actually costs, not the purchase price, the actual cost. You find a house, $400,000. You put 20% down. That's $80,000 in cash, gone from your investment portfolio on day one. Your mortgage is for the remaining $320,000. Let's say it's 7% interest over 30 years. Your monthly payment is $2,129. Over 30 years, you will pay $766,000 for that $320,000 loan. That extra $446,000 is interest. It goes to the bank. It does not build equity. It does not come back. But we're just getting started. Property taxes. The national average is around 1.1% of the home's value per year. On a $400,000 house, that's $4,400 annually. Over 30 years, that's $132,000, and probably more as the home's value increases. Homeowners insurance, an average of $1,400 a year. Over 30 years, that's another $42,000. Maintenance and repairs. Financial planners use a rule of thumb, 1% of the home's value per year, so another $4,000 annually. That's $120,000 over 30 years, and that's conservative. A new roof alone runs $15,000 to $25,000. An HVAC replacement, $10,000. One flooded basement, $20,000. And if you have them, HOA fees, an average of $250 a month. Over 30 years, that's another $90,000. We haven't even talked about closing costs, typically 2 to 5% of the purchase price on the way in, and realtor fees when you sell, typically 5 to 6% of the sales price on the way out. On our $400,000 house that eventually sells for, say, $700,000, closing costs and realtor fees alone could eat up $50,000 to $70,000. Add it all up, the true cost of owning that $400,000 home for 30 years before you see a single dollar of profit is somewhere between $1.1 and $1.4 million. Now, did your house appreciate enough to justify that? Sometimes yes, if you bought in San Francisco in 1995 or Austin in 2010, absolutely. But Yale economist Robert Shiller, who won the Nobel Prize for his work on asset prices, analyzed U.S. home prices going all the way back to 1890. After adjusting for inflation, the average annual return on American residential real estate over that entire period was approximately 0.6% per year, not 6%, 0.6. The stock market over the same period averaged roughly 7% annually after inflation. Your house is not an investment in the traditional sense. It is a place to live that happens to hold most of its value. Those are very different things. So, let's destroy the phrase rent is throwing money away once and for all. Is your car insurance throwing money away? You pay every month and get nothing back unless something goes wrong. Is your health insurance throwing money away? Same structure. Is the interest on your mortgage throwing money away? Because for the first several years of a 30-year mortgage, the vast majority of your payment is interest, not principal, not equity, interest. On that $320,000 mortgage at 7%, in your very first payment of $2,129, approximately $1,867 goes to interest. Only $262 goes to principal. You're throwing away nearly $1,900 in month one. Nobody at Thanksgiving mentions that part. Here's what rent actually buys you. Flexibility, the ability to move for a better job without losing $30,000 in transaction costs, the ability to downsize when your life changes without being trapped in a house that no longer fits you. A 2019 study from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that homeowners are significantly less likely to move for better job opportunities. The technical term is housing lock. The practical term is your house is holding your career hostage. And here's the number that makes the debate truly complicated. If instead of putting $80,000 down on a house, you invested that money in a simple S&P 500 index fund and then also invested the monthly difference between your rent and what your total homeownership costs would have been, in many American cities right now, you would come out financially ahead over a 10 to 15-year period. Not always, not everywhere, but often enough that the math is not as obvious as your uncle thinks. So, if the math is this complicated, why does everyone act like buying is obviously correct? Because this isn't really about math. It never was. The decision to buy a home in America is one of the most emotionally engineered financial decisions in human history. Think about the language. You don't buy a house, you buy a home. Warm, safe, yours. You don't sign a mortgage, you achieve the American dream. You don't take on $500,000 in debt, you put down roots. Every word is designed to activate the emotional brain and deactivate the analytical one. The staging, the fresh paint smell, the open house on a Sunday afternoon with soft music and cookies baking in the oven. Cookies the agent specifically put 20 minutes before you arrived. The cookies are not for eating. The cookies are neurological manipulation. Research from the Journal of Consumer Psychology found that ambient scent in retail environments increases purchase likelihood. Real estate agents have known this for decades. And then there's the social pressure. A 2017 Pew Research study found that 72% of Americans believe homeownership is essential to achieving the American dream. Not helpful, not nice to have, essential. When 72% of your culture believes something is essential to a good life and you don't have it, your brain processes that as a threat to your social standing. You're not making a financial decision. You're trying to belong. The cookies were never about cookies. Now, I'm not here to tell you to never buy a house. I'm here to tell you to make the decision with your brain, not your feelings or your uncle's opinion. Here's when buying genuinely makes financial sense. 1. You plan to stay for at least 7 to 10 years. Transaction costs are so high that short-term ownership almost never pencils out. The break-even point is typically between 5 and 10 years. 2. The price-to-rent ratio in your market is reasonable. This is the purchase price divided by the annual rent for a similar property. A ratio below 15 generally favors buying, above 20, renting. In San Francisco, the ratio is 40. In Detroit, it's around 8. These are not the same decision. 3. You have a stable income and an emergency fund that survives the down payment. Being house poor is one of the most dangerous positions a family can be in. And 4. You're buying the house because of the life it enables. Stability, community, the ability to paint the walls, not primarily as a financial investment. Buy the house because you want the life, not because your uncle told you rent is throwing money away. Here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. The American economy is structurally dependent on people buying houses. The mortgage industry is worth trillions. Real estate employs millions. Home Depot and Lowe's are a $900 billion industry. The entire apparatus requires a constant flow of new buyers who believe buying is always better. The 30-year mortgage wasn't designed for your benefit. It was designed to make monthly payments just low enough that you take on more debt than you could otherwise afford, maximizing the interest paid to the bank. A 15-year mortgage on that same loan would save you over $200,000 in interest, but the payment is higher, so most people take the 30-year, and the bank collects an extra $200,000. The whole system is not designed for you as the customer. You are the product. So here's what I want you to take from this. If you own a home and you love it, that's great. Genuinely, the non-financial benefits are real. Stability, community, control over your space. These things have value that don't show up on a spreadsheet. But if you're renting right now and feeling shame about it, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are potentially making the most rational financial decision available to you. The rent versus buy decision is not a moral question. It is a math question. And the math depends entirely